Hello, Lizzie here, and today I'm going to show you how to make Janette. And Janette is a toiletry holder, but also she could be a holder for craft tools and bits and bobs, children's toys, that sort of thing. But she's certainly a very, very useful it's a holder, sort of roll up, that type of thing. And measuring about 18 by 12, and I say about 18 because it always depends on, you know, your seam allowances, what you've done, your binding, all that sort of thing. So I'll give you an approximate. And now I'm going to have this to hand. Janette is actually, although it's quite, you know, moderately easy, it's quite complicated to put together because there's a lot of repeats of things. So this is how she looks. She's empty at the moment, obviously. We've got a vinyl pocket at the front here. And that's connected with a little strap and the two little D-rings, 1/2 inch straps. And then you've got the strap at the bottom, and that's to help with the roll up. You know, when you roll it up, you can tie it together. Then you've got a fabric pocket going across the top here with a zip, so you can see how that works. And of course, if you want to, you could cover this with like a vinyl covering, or use Eau-de Coat, that type of thing, if you want to, or make with a PVC type of fabric or a vinyl. Sometimes you can get some like tablecloth fabrics that are waterproof. So have a go, try it that way. I wanted to keep it a little bit fabricy. And then you've got the third pocket at the top here, which again is another vinyl pocket with another zip. There we go. So you can put perhaps your toothbrush and toothpaste in there, that type of thing. Or you can, like I said, you could have this for maybe you could put your sort of baby cleaning things in there for when you're out and about. As a young mum, you may, or grandma, you may want to take something like this about with you. So you've got maybe a bottle in here, or cleaning things, a spare nappy, maybe some sort of wipes in here as well, or maybe a pouch for food. I don't know. There's lots of things you can do with Janette. And in the back, if we have a look, she's got the hanging loop there, so you can hang it on the back of a door, which might be really convenient. And then you've got the other tie loop here. So once it's full of bits and bobs, you're going to take the top where the loop is, and you're going to roll it back on itself. Obviously, you've got to imagine there's things in here. Fold it under, and then this can be tied and carried, certainly by holding on to the loop. So you can see how useful it is. So that's Janette, a really lovely name. And we're going to make it in different sorts of fabrics. You can see my fabrics here, and I've got the most amazing little house fabrics, and I actually made jasmine out of this. So you've already seen jasmine video, you'll have seen this fabric. It's just super. So I'm going to pop her to one side so I can keep my eye on her, only because, like I said, there's an awful lot of stages to this that we need to go through. Lots of cutting of strips and straps, and we've got to make it clear so you can understand it as we go along. So already I have got my now this is my inner backing. Okay, this is my inner backing, whereas the little houses are going to be on the outer backing. So let's get that bit done straight away. So I've got that ready to go. The first thing we need to do, and I'm going to follow the instructions for this so I get this absolutely right for you. We've got 2 pieces of vinyl. So your pockets are numbered 1, 2 and 3. So vinyl pocket 1 is the larger piece. It's 14.5 inches from memory. And then it's, let's have a look. I want to make sure I've got this right for you. 6.25 down. So that's the longer piece, okay, because we're going to put some darts in here. Now, because it's vinyl, you could make little snips where you're going to do the darts, but it's very difficult to mark it. So what I've done is I'm going to use a Sharpie pen or a semi-permanent pen to actually mark the dots. So from each outside edge, I'm going to mark in, so that's the side outsides we're coming in. I'm going to mark 3¼ inches, and then 3/4 of an inch, and then 3/4 of an inch again. So it's 3¼ 3/4 3/4, and when those 2 outer dots are put together, that is our dart, and that's the width of our dart. Okay, so I'm going to do it from the other end. So I'm going to flip this round. So from that outside edge, it's 1, 2, 3¼ 3/4 and 3/4. And then you want to take the dart at least 3 inches up. So what you might want to do, I ought to show this to you in a minute so you can just about see what I'm doing. I'm going to take my ruler up, probably not as far as 3 inches. It really is down to you. When I sort of look at the sample I made, I've probably done maybe 2.5. In the pattern I've said 3 inches, I do believe. Let's have a look. Yeah, so at least 3 inches into the pocket. So on this occasion, I think I'm going to do 2.5. There we go. And it's kind of like, you know, it's how you feel about it when you look at it, whether you think that dart could go up, the dart could go a little higher. So that's all I need that pen for. And I'm not sure you're going to see this at all. No. So if I show you on the side camera, and I'll get the back of my pattern so we can perhaps see the little red dots. Oh, that's lovely. We can see that on the back of my pattern. So there's my 3.25 mark, 3/4, 3/4, and there's my 2.5 mark. And again from this side as well. So we're going to pinch those two edge dots together, and then we're going to make the dart up to about that point. Now you're going to see that possibly, so maybe you want to use a light marker, or you could make a sort of a dint with a sort of a blunt instrument, so you've got a mark of some sort, or you can use a measurement. Maybe you can use a measurement on your machine. As I say, with vinyl, there's some certain things that you have to do to try and not damage the goods, if you like. Now with this vinyl, there's no right or wrong, and I'm just bringing my dots together. I wouldn't do a very small stitch. It could possibly be prone to tearing. So I've just pinched my vinyl together, that's the fold line there, and I'm going from this dot here, or the two dots that are just sitting on top of each other, out to that point that I've made. And if you stop stitching before that dot, or go a little bit further, it doesn't matter. It's just a kind of guideline, really. And like I say, don't put your stitch length on too short a length, because it could rip the vinyl. I'm going back 2 or 3 stitches, and that's all I'm doing, just to neaten off my threads there. Now, because I'm using really bright stripy fabric, we're not going to see those red dots at all. You certainly won't see them on that bottom edge. If you're worried about that one, I'm not going to see it. So because this is vinyl, just make sure that you're going to do the same the other side, that your darts are facing the same way. So again, starting at the bottom, not bothering with a back stitch, and I'm just aiming for that mark. And then I'm going back 3 stitches. That's all I'm doing. Just neatening any threads I need to neaten. Keep it tidy. Okay, so that's the first little part done of the pocket. So don't forget, those darts are going to face into the fabric, so it's going to sit with a nice neat edge on the outside. You've got to assume that's the right side, and the bits with the darts sticking out is going to be the inside. Now the first thing we need is the little 5-inch strap. So it says this in the pattern. One end I've already folded in sort of 1/4 inch. You can see it there. I've folded it in 1/4 inch. And it's ready for top stitching. Like I said, I've not done any preparation work other than the cutting and the pressing, just to save a wee bit of time, but I wanted to take you all the way through this. So I'm top stitching around the whole piece, but not obviously the raw ends. I'm going over my nice neat folded end now, and I'm coming up the other side. So that's the top stitching done on the little 5-inch strap. Now this 5-inch strap goes right in the centre of your vinyl. Now you could measure in, and that would be 7 1/4 inches, or you can just fold it in half, pinch it, and put your raw edges on. Let me turn that around on your fold mark. There we go, can you see? So let's pop that under the machine. I'm going to baste it in place. Just make sure I haven't lost my place again. Again, you could mark this with a permanent pen. Probably be a lot easier. So let me get my nail on there. And so your strap is going in the centre of that fold. So a couple of rows just to secure it. Okay, make sure you put it on the right side, keep checking. Okay, so that's your little 5-inch strap attached. Now you want the 14.5-inch length of binding. All of the binding is raw edges at the ends, okay? The straps are going to have either both ends neatened or just one end, and we'll do it as we go along. So your binding should go, can you see, it kind of cocoons the vinyl. It goes, this just sits like a little roof tile on the top. Now assuming you've pressed it well, then your two folded edges should sit nice and neatly on top of each other, and so you should catch both sides quite well. So I'm just putting the vinyl right into the centre of that binding and stitching across. And as we're stitching across, I'm sort of encasing that 5-inch strap. So make sure at this stage it's sitting fairly straight. If you kink it over, it'll notice. So let's just get that in place there. Trim that a little bit there. So now we've done that, and that's the top part of our pocket done. What we need to do is to put the strap, the 12-inch strap, that's going to help with the roll up. If you see at the beginning of the video, I rolled it up, tied it in a bow. Well, we need to put one here. Now you could put it quite easily on the bottom of this, and that's probably a lot easier than trying to put it on the vinyls we did before. So I'm just folding my short end in half. This isn't directional, so it doesn't matter. Put a little notch in there. So I want to find my 12-inch strap that has one end folded. So let's see if we can find one. We've got so many straps and bits and bobs, it's crazy. You always pick up the one that's not. Oh, that's the one. There we go. So that's one strap. Well, that's the double-ended one. I will get this right in a second, guys. Ah, there we go. So that's the 12-inch strap with one end folded over, pressed, and then folded into the middle, and then folded again. So we've ended up with a 1/2-inch width strap. So let's just top stitch this. Believe it or not, I had all of these in order when I first started. So I would say prepare all your pieces and then put them in order of the pattern. So just trim our threads. So now what we do is that we're going to lay our vinyl pocket over the top of our piece, our inner backing piece. And because it's vinyl, we can't pin it. But what I suggest you do is at least get the corners lined up with a clip. Okay. And the sides as well, just to hold everything in place. I'll hold this up when I'm done. This fabric is just so lovely. Okay, there we are. Can you see that? Let's see if I get this out of the way. There we go. And it's not gonna sit beautifully flat because we've got those darts in. But what we need to do is to make sure that we clip our 12-inch strap onto that seam. So I'm going to bring my vinyl down at that point, put my strap over the top, get a clip and just clip that in place. There we go. So let me show you now what that looks like. Okay, there we are. So you can see that the vinyl is clipped in place, so we're good to go, ready to start stitching. And all I've done is clip that 12-inch strap there, so I can catch it in the seam allowance. So now what I want you to do is to stitch from here down, across and up. You might find this area here where you've got the dart, you've got to maneuver it a little bit. It may not sit dead flush with your raw edge, but do the best you can, because vinyl is pretty unforgiving in a way. Lengthen your stitch a little. You may want to use a Teflon foot, walking foot. I mean, my machine seems to cope not too bad with it. So then work your way along and try and make sure that the darts are folded in the same direction. To be honest, you're not going to see them very much. So let's just... So I'm just going over the bottom of my strap now. That's it. And then get the vinyl. I want to make sure that the vinyl darts are going in the same direction, so that these are pointing in. And just try and get that lined up. Like I say, it may not want to go. And your seam allowance here is less than 1/4 inch. It's going to be about 1/8 inch or just a little bit over. And then to the corner and up and stitch. You're going to be watching the fabric rather than the vinyl, so make sure you're catching the fabric. The vinyl's just going to sit on top doing its thing. There we go. Let's keep it tidy. So there's the bottom pocket in place. The next stage is the fabric pocket. Now we need to iron over the bottom 1/4 inch, so we'll do that now. Keep everything tidy. I'll use my little mat to help me with that. We also need the 3-inch piece of binding. Actually, this is the strap, 3-inch strap. We're going to make a little loop to put D-rings in, so I'm going to machine this top stitch and make it neat. Raw ends, these little short ends are raw ends, because we're just going to loop that and have our D-rings there. So I'll give that another little press. I can whiz this under my machine while I'm waiting for that to heat up a little bit better. So I'm literally top stitching my 3-inch strap. And then I'm going to hook my D-rings on the 3-inch strap. And you may well sort of want to encase those D-rings in so they don't move very much, but I'm not too fussed about that. You may want to. So let's just try and pick this up. So my 3-inch strap is now top stitched, and I'm putting my little D-rings on. I'm using 1/2 inch. Listen, if you want to use bigger straps and bigger D-rings because they're a little bit flimsy for you, by all means do that. So look, I've attached my little D-rings, can you see? So I'm just folding that around. Now you might want to stitch close to the edge of your D-rings. I'm not going to bother, but you might want to. And all I'm doing is stitching those raw edges together, just so it's easier to handle. There we go. So there's my little bit done there, my little loop. Okay, let's just make sure we're following the instructions, excuse me, because this is important, because this is, although like I said it's a very easy project, it's actually quite complicated in some ways. So we're kind of now on step 4. Let me just check. Yep. Yeah. So the pocket. So in this instance, we want to make sure this is directional. So we want the bottom of the pocket, and we need to fold it over 1/4 inch. So let's just do that. And then we want to find the middle, and we can just quickly, I mean, this is not quite 1/4 inch, but you might want to measure it. Keep all the dimensions correct to the pattern. There we go. So I've folded that over 1/4 inch, and you see that? And that's the bottom. So I'm bringing together my short ends, finding the centre. I'm just going to give that a little pinch, and I'm going to pop my D-rings loop underneath that. Let me put a clip there so you can see. It's a little bit wonky, but you can see that's where it goes. Okay, I'll straighten it up, but that's where we want to stitch it. Now, don't stitch it to hold it. You know, usually we'll baste to hold it in place. Don't do that, because we're going to put the whole thing on the inner fabric in just a moment. So now we need to put the zip on. Once we've got our little loop there ready to go, the next stage is to put the zip on the top edge. So let's change the foot over. So I'm putting a zipper foot on. You can try without if you want to. Get that securely in place. And got a lovely bright lime green. So this is going to go over on the top edge. So if you remember, that's the bottom edge with a little D-ring loop. So the zip is going to go on this edge here. So same as normal, right sides together. And if you want to, I've asked you to cut it just a little bit longer, just to allow for any differences in your cutting, and if you cut the zip too short, too long, that sort of thing. So we're going to work our way around the slider. So I'm just going to, can you see the top of the zip there's overlapping by 1/4 inch or so. And in fact, let's do it the other way around. So I'm now stitching from the wrong side of my fabric onto, so I can see. It just helps if you can see the zipper teeth, and then your zipper foot butts up to the teeth really nicely. So just follow that all the way along. Let the zipper foot do its work. When you get close to the zipper slider, like I've just done, then just lift up your foot and just get that slider out of the way. And I'm doing the raw edge of the pocket to the edge of the zipper tape. So it's not an exact measurement, but I could tell you it's, well, it's close to 1/4 inch, just a wee bit over 1/4 inch, between 1/4 inch and 3/8. So there's my zip attached, but we do want to top stitch this. Keeps everything nice and neat. So again, I've got so far, let's just do a little bit more. I'm just going to get my slider out of the way. There we go, that's better. And we're just going all the way along. Now my zipper foot doesn't go right up to the edge. You may have a zipper foot that goes right up to the edge of the zipper teeth, in which case just be careful that you don't get too close, the fabric too close to the zipper teeth. So I'll just trim that back a little bit. And there. So now we've attached the zip, and by all means give this a press, because there's not many opportunities where you're going to be able to press this because of the vinyl. So now we need to attach this pocket onto the inner backing, which is the piece that we've just put the vinyl pocket onto. So Let's put that to one side. What you're going to do is measure up 1/2 inch. So if I bring this across here, you can see. So this is the top of your vinyl pocket here. We're going to measure up 1/2 inch, and that's where the bottom of our pocket's going to go. So let's do that. And I'll use a fabric marker, I think. But what you need to do is to make sure that it's straight, because if all of these things are out by a little bit, you'll end up with everything a little bit wonky as you go up. So we could, just to make sure, is to measure with our ruler, and that is coming up at about 7 inches from the bottom. It may be different for you. This is like, you know, with cutting and things like this. It's all slightly different. So 1/2 inch from the top of that pocket is absolutely fine. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pin this down in place. So if I pop this down, I'm making sure my little loop doesn't get detached. So you're going to pin it or use your quilting clips. Let's get this in place. And you're laying your zip flat because we're going to put some binding over the top of that. So just pull that to make sure it's nice and straight. Pop your pins in or your clips. I'll show you when I've done this so you can see exactly what I'm doing. It's not very often I use pins, but it's handy for this. Okay, so look, can you see? I've just pinned the pocket in place all the way along here. So we're going to stitch from here down, and then we're going to top stitch along the bottom of the pocket, catching our little loop there with the D-rings in, coming across the bottom and up. So let's just change the foot. So you can see how you might get confused with all the different pieces of information that's in the pattern. Like I say, it's a nice easy make, but there's a lot of direction, if you like, and different parts that you need. So just make sure that you catch the end of that zip. We're going to do just less than 1/4 inch seam allowance because that all wants to be caught in the binding. So just coming down to the bottom. I've lined up with my marks that I made. So now we're going to top stitch right across, and as I come to the little loop with the D-rings, I'll be removing the clip and the pins. So I'm just stitching across the bottom of the pocket now, just to top stitch, remove the clips so I can now stitch over the loop with the D-rings, put a little double row stitching in there if you want, and just remove the pins as you go. So you're stitching right across that bottom edge, which you've already folded over if you remember. So now just coming up the other side and over the top of the zip, just a little bit further. There we are, we've attached everything so far. There's our zip installed. Okay, so the zip hasn't been attached to the bag here yet. We're going to do that on the next stage. So we've got a piece of binding here which we're going to attach to the bottom of the next piece of vinyl, which is the pocket here. So if we look at the, let's have a look, you want is step 8. Step 8 is placing the vinyl over the bottom edge. In fact, both edges, both long edges, get the binding because it keeps it very, very neat. And also I'm just looking at my fabric, making sure that I've got the houses going the right way. To be honest, such a small piece is not going to make a bit of a difference here. So I'm just, again, sort of cocooning the vinyl inside the binding, and I'm just going to stitch straight across. Again, you might want to use a Teflon foot, or a walking foot helps. you might find your machine is fine with it. So we're going across the top edge of the binding because the bottom edge gets attached to the zip. So there's the bottom edge done. We now need to do the top edge. So again, we need another binding strip. Just make sure we're picking up the right ones. Yeah. So now we're going to attach the other end. So both long edges of this piece of vinyl get the binding. Just make sure that vinyl goes right up into the fold of your binding. Okay, so that's our long edges done. Now the one, we can just make sure with mine is direction, I want to make sure the house is the right way around. So this is my bottom edge here, and I'm going to attach it. Let's just get rid of that thread because I won't be able to do it once it's attached. There we go. So this bottom edge here then goes over the top of the zip. So if I just pin it, it's okay to pin if you can because you've covered your vinyl up. So let's pin it in place. You can use clips just on the sides if you want to, if you're a bit sort of concerned about this part. I'll just put one either end, just so I can show you. That's it. And then I'll put clips at the top. Again, I'll show you in a second. Oops. So there we go. So I want you to have a look. So this bottom binding of the vinyl is going over the top of my zip. You can still see the zip teeth there. So we're just going to top stitch that on top of the zip to hold it all in place and make it neat. And that gives us the bottom part of that pocket with the vinyl. So again, I'm going to change my foot. And like I say, just be aware that if your zipper foot goes very close to the teeth, first of all, it may alter the size of your holder just by a couple of millimetres. It's funny how we go metric millimetres, isn't it? And then we're just going to run across there. And I'm just going to stitch this. I'm going to take my pins out now. I'm going to stitch this so it's the same width as the other half of the zip. So I'm just making sure that it looks okay. That's it. Let's get that onto the... There we are. So I'm just going to line that up so it's super, super neat. So this is not like you would traditionally put a zip in, but I mean top stitching is perfectly acceptable. Oh, hi there. Thank you for stopping by. I was going to talk to you about the Gold Club actually, and I'm preparing for our Facebook Live tonight because every week on Facebook in the Gold Sewing group, we actually do other things like free motion embroidery tonight. So the Gold Online Sewing Group, what is all that about? Well, if you go to my website, lizzycurtis.com, you'll see the sign up tab. Click on that, you get a choice of membership, but what you do get every month is 2 different super patterns, especially for you. And do you know what? When they go in the shop the next month, they're $4.99 each. So this is an absolute bargain for £5, about $6.20, something like that. You're getting those 2 full patterns with video tutorials as well. So why don't you join up today and join the online sewing group, which is known as the Gold Sewing Group. I'll see you there. Bye. It's not the straightest of stitching. When I come to my zip slider, I'm going to just move it out the way. Make sure my zip stays in place. Okay, just take that out. So there is the bottom of the vinyl pocket attached, and it's neatened up the zip. Let me show you on the side camera. So this is the bottom bit of binding we just did, and I've top stitched it onto the zip there. So this is my first vinyl pocket, so that's number 1. This is my fabric pocket here, which is number 2. Let's just open it up so you can see. That's pocket number 2. And then this is pocket number 3. And we're going to actually attach the second zip across there now. So now I've top stitched the bottom of my vinyl number 3 pocket onto this zip here. I'm actually going to attach the zip on the top. Now in the pattern it says to do that before you attach it to your inner panel, but you can do it this way, or you can do it as it says in the pattern. But what you need to do is to attach this zipper piece to your top binding. So all you're doing is attaching it separately. Can you see? So just line that up under your machine. It's obviously easier if it's loose, and you're just going to top stitch along there and attach the two. And like I said, if you want to use a Teflon foot, please do. You might find that the vinyl sticks to the bed of your machine, in which case put some tissue paper there, or maybe just a little piece of talcum powder. When you come to your zip slider, just move that out of the way. There we go. And then just continue all the way along. There we go. So that has attached the zip to the top part of my vinyl pocket. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch up the sides, and then I'm going to I'm just going to pin that zip down, because I've got another piece to go over the top of that. I'm just going to keep my zipper foot on there for the time being. So let's do the other side. Just make sure it's all sitting neatly onto your fabric. Let's just pull that out. Make sure it's straight. There we go. So that's attached. So many bits. That's attached the sides, but obviously this is still loose. So now we've attached that last vinyl pocket. This is pocket number 3. We've got our binding going across the bottom there, attaching it to the pocket below. We've got this zip at the top here. We now want to secure that. So you've got a piece to cut, which is the width of the holder plus a couple of inches. Just make sure your directional fabric is going the right way. And then we're just going to attach that. So again, it's just right sides together with your zip. So your zip underneath is the teeth facing up, and this is the right side of my fabric going down on top of the zip. So you're going to do the raw edge of your fabric to the edge of the zip tape as your guide. Obviously, if your zip is open, be very careful that you don't veer off. Keep a parallel view, if you like, with the end of your piece to where you're stitching. But as soon as it's safe to do so, which we can do now, is to take that zip slider back along, and that will keep your zip together. And as long as it's nice and flat and straight anyway, it's going to be perfect. But just follow the teeth of the zip. And then right to the side there. There we go. So that's that portion attached. Can you see? So we want to top stitch that to make that really nice and neat. This little piece here is purely decorative. It also helps to obviously secure the zip and make it look pretty, but we'll still top stitch it to make it neat. Just make sure that all your fabric is sitting straight. Again, be aware that if your zipper foot goes very, very near the teeth, you're taking up more of your fabric, so you may need to trim and adjust as you go. There we go. So that's that top piece installed. So let me flap that down. There you go. You can see that's just covering that. Now you could baste that to keep that secure. So we'll do that anyway. I'll keep my zipper foot on just for a second. Hold all your layers. Keep them all straight. And that's joined all of those layers together now. So that's really lovely and neat. So the next thing we need to do is we've got to make the loop that goes over the top. We've also got to make the strap that goes on the back. So one of these, this one I think, yeah, is a double-ended strap with both, so when I say double-ended, both ends have been folded over, and that is for your strap at the back. So I'm going to top stitch that. Let me change the foot. And then all we need to do is measure and find the halfway point on our fabric. It was easy to find the midpoint of the width. We then need to measure down. So I'll just check the pattern again for that. So it's 5.5 inches down. And we're just going to attach it with a 1/2 inch box. But we can do that in a second. So this is our strap that goes on the backing fabric, and that's the outer backing fabric. So top stitching along all 4 sides. Across the bottom, and just break your threads. Because we're going to stitch it on with a box, you don't need to back tack or anything like that. It's going to be secure enough. So we'll just pop that to one side for the moment, because we're going to put that on our backing fabric, our outer backing fabric. This is going to be our strap, our loop, our hanging loop. So I'm going to top stitch that. And don't break your threads, just go across the bottom of it. It's all going to be attached into the seam. Okay. Right, so that's good to go. Now the 2 ends are going to sit side by side like that. And if you want to, you can join those together so you're not, so it becomes one piece of fabric again, but I'll just leave it as it is. So let's just put our top part to one side. We need our ruler and we need our outer piece. So don't forget, if you've got directional fabric for the strap and the loop, we're going from the top edge and down. So we need to find the centre. So fold your fabric lengthwise and give yourself a little crease. And I'll use my fabric pen here to measure down 5.5 inches. So I'm getting my ruler parallel with the top of my fabric coming down, and I'm just going to put a little mark there, and that's my line. So with the strap that has the double-ended, in other words, this is a nice neat folded edge, so is this one. I'm going to take one end, just trim those threads, and I'm going to attach it to the back of my my outer lining, my outer piece. And we want to make sure we have it the right way around. So when we look at the original one, the strap comes, let's get the loop out of the way so you don't get confused. The strap comes off your backing fabric that way. So it doesn't get stitched that way, it gets stitched that way. So if we pop that down, so it comes off the edge. Okay, and then we can pop a pin in there just to hold it. There we go. And we're just going to put a 1/2 inch box there. Or in other words, we're going across the bottom. I can remove my pin. Across the bottom and do a little back stitch. It's got to be nice and strong. So a couple of little back stitches here, there and everywhere will help. Maybe 4 or 5 stitches up. Across, might do that again. Don't forget, you know, this is going to take the unwrapping and the tying of the bow, so it wants to be quite strong. And then again. So there is our strap in place. Make sure your fabric's the right way around. There's our strap in place there. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is, well, we could actually attach our loop piece to this, because this has got to sit in the back. Now I've still got my little crease mark that I made when I found the centre of my fabric. So I'm going to pop my strap over the top, my loop. So it's my large loop, it's 12 inches long. I'm going to pop that down there and get a clip, hold that in place. And I'm just going to stitch that down. Do you see? Oops, there we go. You can see where it is, and that's at the top. So my houses helpful, aren't they? Because you know they're going to be at the top of your piece. So like I said right at the beginning, there's lots of bits to this, and it would be easy to get confused. There's a couple of stages in there you might want to alter. I've altered a little bit as I've gone along, but generally you're going to just follow it exactly as I've done it. So there is our outer piece, which is looking gorgeous. This is our inner piece, which is looking as equally as gorgeous. So we're going to do wrong sides together. So we're kind of going to make, as if you're going to make a quilt, and we're going to just clip this together. We just get our clips in, quite a few, because the next stage is binding, so I will go through that with you. Now I've asked you to cut quite a long piece, so you're going to do lots of joins. With my fabric, I had quite a few short bit pieces, which I'm okay about, but I wanted to use the stripe, and I wanted to use the stripe going across rather than down. So just be careful of your loop, make sure that's kept well out of the way. So you're putting those 2 layers together, just like you would if you were making a quilt. And just be mindful that you might need to adjust bits and pieces if your cutting is not brilliant. It depends what sort of day it's been, doesn't it? And sometimes I'd say to you, cut like the backing, this, you know, the backing outer piece, cut it a little bit bigger, and then you can always trim it back. So there's my piece pinned, clipped together. Let me show you that way, you can see it a bit better. And as we put the binding on, we'll kind of jig it about a bit so it's a little bit better, a little bit neater. So binding, so there's my binding strips, and I've got a pin where I know I'm going to start, because I've got some long pieces in first, and then I've got shorter pieces going round. Oh, that's quite a long piece, but there's shorter pieces in there as well. Now I haven't pressed this in half. You absolutely could if you want to. That's down to preference. Some people, this is a 2.5 inch strip, pretty standard for binding. Some people do like to fold it in half and press, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But we're going to start about 6 inches from the end. So this is our end. I'm starting down here somewhere. So I'm just lining up my stripes, and I'm going to start stitching there. So this bit here. And I'm going to put it on my holder about halfway down on the long side. So just holding that together. Now I'm going to just do this without pinning. You might want to pin the whole thing, which is absolutely fine. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. So just bring your edges together, your raw edges together, and pop it onto your work. So we're going through all the layers now. 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to mitre the corners. Now if you've joined pieces together, you may well have one of the joining pieces of your binding, one of your mitre corners, right in the way. Unfortunately, you know, that's just how it is, but you should be fine. Just carry on as if it's not there. And what we're doing is we're actually attaching this to the inner part because of the vinyl. Very, very difficult for them to turn that over from the back and hand stitch the vinyl. You may well want to top stitch the whole thing rather than hand stitch, but I do quite like hand stitching binding even for this project. So, like I say, 1/4 inch. And as you come to the corners, see my binding, like I kind of wished it upon myself. That binding is right on the corner. So I'm stopping about 1/4 inch away. I didn't mean to cut my threads. 1/4 inch away from the corner. I'm just going to lift my piece up. You wouldn't necessarily break your threads. You're just turning that as a 90 degree. So you're folding it back on itself. So you end up with a pleat like that, yeah. And then you start stitching 1/4 inch in. Just make sure that's all lined up beautifully. Let's try and get that a little better. There we go. Now, I didn't mean to break my threads, so I've done a little back stitch there to hold. Now I have to get rid of the clips. I can't really work with so much stuff going on. Now again, you've got that pocket that kind of wants to shift a little bit because the vinyl with the dart is kind of, it wants to curve in a bit. So just be aware of that and just try and make it a little bit straighter as you get to it. When you come up to the strap here at the bottom, take it into your work, line everything up, and here we go again. Just take it in bite-sized chunks. Make sure your binding is folded in half. That's all looking gorgeous. Come up to the corner, 1/4 inch away, lifting my needle up, my foot up, swiveling my piece around. You can take it out from under your foot if you want to, and then all you're doing is folding it back on itself like we did before. Make sure your binding is raw edges together, still nice and neat. Finger press it if you want to. So you're just folding it back, and then you're folding it back on itself again to make that mitered corner. And then you're stitching 1/4 inch away from the folded edge. This is how I do it. You may do it differently, and that's fine. Just got that stitch caught there. Let me just give that a cut. That's it. And I've got far too much binding here. I can't remember how much I've told you to cut, but you should have plenty. You should have plenty. And actually I would always cut more. If a pattern says cut 10 inches, I would cut 15. As long as you've got the spare fabric to do that. So again, I'm just keeping everything lovely and straight. Coming up to my third corner now. Just make sure my binding is straight. Just going to get rid of these clips. I prefer not to work with anything, to be honest. I'm moving my zip slider out of the way. Actually, you want to try and make sure that your zip slider's at the same end. I don't think I have, but it doesn't really matter, but it looks neat. So we're just coming up to the top corner now. So I'm just making sure that my backing fabric is going to be in the right position. Might have slipped a little bit. So like I say, you want to stop about 1/4 inch away, lift your needle out of your work, lift your foot up, swivel it around, do yourself a 45 degree, Like I say, I was trying to keep my binding. Give it a finger press and then take it back on itself. And I'm going to follow my outer backing piece. So 1/4 inch in. Just make sure those loops are sitting inside your work. So they're not sitting out, they're sitting underneath. 1/4 inch seam allowance still. So when I get to about here, just going to make sure all my pieces are sitting nicely before I go any further. And this is where pinning it really well beforehand will keep everything straight. So we're just coming up to that last corner now. And just turn. Let's move all of these bits. Keep your raw edges together. Do yourself a nice fold. Now if you're missing what I'm doing, if you're not really sure, if you've never done this before, I have done so many videos doing the binding technique, so look up another video. So I'm going so far back here and I'm stopping. And this is how I do binding. So I've got huge amounts of binding here, but that's just me erring on the side of caution. And would you believe I've got a join? It's always the way. I just can't believe that. It just worked out that way. And actually I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpick that and use that because it's in the perfect place. I don't want to have another seam. So let's just unpick it. Now ordinarily you lay these two ends over the top of each other by 2.5 inches because that's the width of your binding, so that's your guide. But in this instance I'm cutting this away, so it ends up a wee bit more complicated. So I don't need any of that. So fortunately, do you remember I left quite a long tail, so I've got plenty to play with. I'm going to get rid of that clip. And what I need to do is put these right sides together and do that 45-degree join. And I want to make sure that it's absolutely perfect. So I'm going to overlap again by 2.5 inches. Where the longest part here is sticking out, I'm going to use that as my guide. So overlap by 2.5 inches. So I'll use my ruler and my scissors here. There we go. So overlap by 2.5 inches, and I'm cutting away the top part. So just make sure that's lined up, and this is lined up. So they're overlapping each other, and I want to only overlap by 2.5 inches. So if you can imagine that if this was a straight end here, just here, that there is my end, and I only want to overlap this piece by 2.5 inches. Like I say, it's a little bit more complicated because I had that join there. I didn't expect that. So let's just get that lined up. And I've got that point there, which I must remember I've got. There we go, happy with that. Very happy with that. So just cut there. And there's always that moment in time you think, oh, I've cut it, I've got to redo it all. No, it'll work out fine. So now I'm just going to give myself a little bit of leeway, and I'm just going to cut a little piece of this away, just so I've got longer tails. It always helps if you've got a longer tail at either end. Here we're kind of governed by the fact that it's near a corner, but this one I can cut a little bit further away. So now all I'm going to do is line these up together, and I'm going to stitch that 45-degree angle across, and I'm just going to pretend that the piece that was cut is actually a straight edge. So if I get that down, do you see that angle there? Well, if it was a straight edge, it would be like that. So I'm going to pretend that that's what I'm dealing with. So I've stitched my cut end and my straight end together. Just make sure they fit. So just pull them out like that. Can you see that binding? It fits beautifully. And it's that 2.5 inch rule. So even if your binding is 2 inches, that overlap is 2 inches. But in this instance, it was 2.5. So just trim down. So don't trim it until you're absolutely sure. And then you've got a second chance of getting it right. So pop it under the machine. Just start off where you finished. I just overlap by a few stitches. Get that new piece of a join nicely straight. And then just bring it down. Now, just make sure that you're catching all your layers again. Quarter inch seam allowance. And you might need to ease that in a little bit. But if you do, it's fine. So there we are. So there is the binding attached. You can see it all attached beautifully on there. So now it's just a case of folding it to the back. If you need to trim any of it, please trim. Just make sure that you caught all of your raw edges in. So we'll just quickly clip this back. In fact, it's easier to do it where I can see the stitched line, because you only fold back to that stitch line, and that's where you would hand stitch this onto. So it's just a slip stitch. If you want to machine, if you want to top stitch and machine, then by all means, just make sure you are catching all the layers as you do that. Obviously it's a stronger finish than a hand stitch. Make sure you miter your points as you go round. You could put a clip on the corner there just to hold it. Makes it lovely and neat. And then now this is, if you're going to press this, which obviously you can do, then press it from this back side, from the outside, rather than, well, you wouldn't be able to do the inside very well. Just fold all these edges over. I wouldn't use pins. I would try and use clips if you can. And we're nearly there. Oops. Just get that fold of your binding only to your stitch line. Otherwise you'll end up with a tiny little piece of binding on the inside and nothing on the outside. So just fold that in, do yourself a mitre, and put a clip there. Could do with another one there really. And then all of these straps and loops, they all go to the inside. So I'm doing this really quickly, but so you'd want to take a lot more time than me. So you can see it's quite a nice easy make. There's lots of just straight stitching, but there's parts where you need to kind of concentrate on what bit you're doing next. And if it does go wrong, you haven't done any damage. The vinyl, mainly you'll have stitched on side seams, so that's not too bad. That just needs another clip there. That's it. Good. So that, if I show you the back, so that's the back with our lovely stripy lining. Actually, it blends in really well, doesn't it? And unfortunately, our houses go the right way. There's our hanging loop. There's our strap for rolling up. And on the inside, there's our top zip there. Try and get those sliders in the same position. Mine are not, but yours should be. I think my original one is. So you've got your top vinyl pocket here, you've got your fabric pocket here, and then you've got your larger pocket here. Now with the little D-rings there, you're just going to pop the strap through and then just attach it. And then you've got your other strap at the bottom for ready when you're doing a roll-up. So let's have a look at the original one, which has been pressed. And it looks fairly neat now, so you can see how that looks. There's the back. So that red binding really sort of shows it off, doesn't it, beautifully? There's my loop there. And of course, where I've hand stitched it down, obviously I've made sure that I've kept the loop hanging that way, and then it just flips up. And if you want to top stitch that onto there, obviously you can, but I quite like it just sitting there like that. And you can see how the front little D-rings you are used with the strap, so it sits quite nicely, keeps it all together. And obviously it's a nice big wide deep pocket now for putting your shampoo and conditioner in, or maybe other, like I say, bath toys, that type of thing. Now, like I said, it is mainly all fabric, apart from there's a couple of bits of vinyl, so you might want to use another sort of vinyl all throughout to keep it really waterproof. You might want to eau de coat it. You can get an iron-on vinyl covering for your regular fabric. You may want to do that, but I thought, well, we've given you the basics and the start of an idea, and then you take it to whatever level you want to. But that is Janette. And you can see how she rolls up really nicely. 2 ties coming together beautifully. Nice little bow. And there you are, you're good to go. And obviously that's going to be full of stuff. It's going to be out here. So there we are. That is Janette. And I hope you make loads.